Hey, welcome to another episode of Mikey's Video Game Madness. I know I promised more videos on a regular basis. Unfortunately, after the place I was working at sadly closed, I literally immediately got not the flu, it definitely felt like the flu, but a really bad cold. So I was down for the count. I'm sure I probably still sound somewhat congested. So today we're playing the Resident Evil Remake on the PlayStation 4 Pro, although you won't see any of the benefits on here per se. I used a portable capture device instead of streaming on the regular PlayStation 4. My apartment is in need of repair. I don't have a light in the bedroom, which is where the recording equipment is, and I didn't feel like plugging a bunch of wires, so I just finished Leon's campaign, so I decided to play Claire's campaign and this little preview, or whatever you want to call it, the little playthrough, as I'll probably go off tangent. I think that hamburger is the grossest looking thing in this entire game. It looks moldy to me almost, and greasy and gross. As gory as this game is, that grosses me out. If you're familiar with the PlayStation 1 version, don't think you're just playing a better graphical version of that, like a better looking version of that with like Resident Evil 4's over the shoulder gameplay. It's definitely different. Like, it's basically someone new telling the same story through a different game, and it's great. It's familiar yet unfamiliar at the same time. Like, none of the scares are the same, the puzzles are different, the enemies are a lot of times different. It takes the core of what makes Resident Evil 2 and is fresh. And I know when they were talking about the Final Fantasy VII remake, that kind of turned me off a bit. I was like, I just want a better looking version of Final Fantasy VII. I know there was a remake of Resident Evil 1, but I still felt like in a lot of ways it was still close to the original Resident Evil and it just looked better. But this complete overhaul is great. I mean, I would love to see a nicer looking version of the old school Final Fantasy VII. But if they seriously give its treatment, I hope they decide not to make it episodic whenever they do decide to release it, if they don't cancel it. I hope it comes out as one game, but if they gave it this treatment where it was familiar yet the same, and adds to the story, they get better actors, like go with the better technology. I mean, this is amazing. Resident Evil 2 is one of my favorite PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 experiences, although I probably played it on the PlayStation 2 as well. Like, the whole time I was playing this, I wanted to go back and play the original, not because this was bad, but because it's nostalgic. Since I finished the game as Leon, I actually have the original outfits. So, Claire's outfit's a little bit more skimpy, even though that's what I'm familiar with, because that's what she kind of wore in the first game, although it's a little bit altered. It's actually how Claire looked in either the Umbrella or Dark Side Chronicles, whatever one of those first person, not first person, it was like a light gun shooter. So this is beautiful. The graphics and everything, and the detail on Claire's jacket is quite incredible. The outfit that Claire wears is closer to the outfit that she wears, like the normal outfit. This was unlocked after I beat the game. The normal outfit kind of looks like what Claire wore in Resident Evil Revelations 2, which I still need to finish. It's nowhere as good as this, but the price is right. I think you can usually get it for $20. Really haven't played a lot of bad Resident Evil games. The closest ones I played to being bad were that Resident Evil game on the Game Boy Color was Resident Evil Gaiden that took place on a cruise ship. And then I played Survivor, which at the time I thought it was alright, but it would have been really cool. Like in Japan, you could play it like a first-person game with a light gun, but you had to play it as a straight-up first-person game. And everything looked kind of terrible because part of the reason why they use pre-rendered backgrounds is so they could have higher quality polygonal models to make it look somewhat realistic, at least for the time. Although half of it was part of being cinematic. But this is so cinematic, like the way like that guy like points, the lighting and the shadowing. It's just so on point. I've seen it play on different configs on the PC. It still looks great. Like the only downgrade I've seen like on the lower end PC games is like some of the writing on things start to become a little bit blurrier, but on the base systems it still looks pretty good, although lower resolution. I played the Xbox One X demo and the PlayStation 4 Pro, which if you played on that, like if you don't have a high-end PC, I would definitely recommend that. The only major difference that I saw between the two, because there's a lot of post-processing and stuff like that to give it like a cinematic look. There's film grain. I turned it off, but you barely notice it. I can't stand like forced film grain in games. I don't know why. It really bothers me. I thought it was really cool when I first saw it at Silent Hill 2, and then every game started using it, so start to bother me a lot. Like one thing Resident Evil 2 took out from Resident Evil 1 that I love that's in newer Resident Evil games is the ability to examine things in real-time 3D. But yeah, it was fantastic. I finished Leon's campaign. You don't really beat Resident Evil 2 until you beat it like 4 times. You beat the game as both characters, and you actually get different story elements, different areas that you get to explore with each individual character. Like they explore different parts and see different things, so it's not just like playing the same game as a different character. And then you unlock a B scenario with that character, which actually rearranges where all the items are, and there's actually additional story elements after that. So after you beat it 4 times, that's when you're really getting the whole story. And then there's additional things you can download. If you're familiar with it, you know what it is, because it's the same stuff as the PlayStation 1 version. And then there's actually some extra DLC that's coming out, like
Don't shoot. Get down.
they're like what if scenarios, like characters that might have not necessarily survived in the main game. You play their story from their perspective. I'm curious what that's going to end up as. That's absolutely free. There's not a ton of paid for DLC. You can get outfits. The only outfit I thought was kind of cool is Claire's outfit from Resident Evil 1.5, which was Resident Evil 2 before they decided to overhaul it and start from the beginning. There was like this motorcycle lady, I can't think of her name offhand. Eventually she turned into Claire, because as you saw, Claire turned into like Claire was riding a motorcycle, but it wasn't supposed to be Claire. But yeah, this game is so beautiful and nice, and it controls well, and it's not particularly hard. I don't think Resident Evil, I mean, you could play it on harder settings, but if you can refrain from playing it on easy, I forgot what it's called, like the amateur mode or whatever. I've died a lot in this game to the point where it suggested it, because like there's some times where you just have to figure out stuff. The best thing I could tell you if you're not familiar with this game is don't get frustrated. Even though you can discard things, I decided to skip these credits just because, I mean, it doesn't really add anything to the story. This is way in the beginning, so there isn't any spoilers. The demo actually starts where this video ends, and it's not much, but it's just a gorgeous game in HDR. Like the lights like shine really bright, and it doesn't really, I think the colors are a little bit more vibrant, but I think with HDR, and maybe it's because I don't have the $9,000 HDR TV, but I definitely noticed a difference in contrast when playing this.
They'll know something.
This mostly runs at 60 frames per second. But anyway, as I was saying like 5 minutes ago, like the only difference between Resident Evil 2 Remake on the Xbox One X versus the PlayStation 4 Pro is that I noticed the reflections on the floor are, I'm trying to think what the term of that is called, like real-time space reflections or whatever. But anyway, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's it's more low res on the PlayStation 4 than it is on the Xbox One X. That's really the only difference. The actual characters and everything still looked really detailed. Lighting, it still looked really sharp. This was before I watched Digital Foundry. Digital Foundry said the PlayStation version with, I guess, whatever they use as anti-aliasing, or maybe it doesn't have anti-aliasing, the Xbox One does. They said the Xbox One X version is a little bit softer, but I didn't notice a difference, but I didn't have them side by side. But I played both of them because I was so obsessed with this game. I wanted to wait, but I was like, after the 30 minutes, I'm going to play the PlayStation 4 version, so I got to actually play both of them. You can't really lose no matter what you play it on. The only thing I've noticed was significant to some degree, where I really noticed it without looking hard, is when I saw someone playing it on not maybe the highest settings, like some of the writing on the background, not the character models, but some of the things in the background looked a little bit harder to make out, like the writing or engravings on certain things weren't as sharp, but that's minuscule. That was also the demo and not the final game, but the reflections and everything. This game's so beautiful. I want to go back and play the PlayStation 1. I started a playthrough really early on in my channel of the PlayStation 1 version. I didn't finish it because it was so long in between I played it last time. Like, I didn't know it like the back of my hand. It's really stupid to do if you're doing a playthrough, because I don't really like playthroughs to begin with, but it was an excuse to replay something. But I imagine a pet peeve watching a playthrough, because even when watching an impressions video, sometimes it's frustrating to me. Here I'm trying to shoot the legs, which I never really tried before with that particular enemy. It has riot gear on, so shooting the legs doesn't make the enemy fall, so that's something that usually works on the other zombies, but that time it didn't work because they have the knee pads and stuff on there, and they're actually zombies in there. Zombies aren't the only enemies that you'll encounter in this game. There is variety, but my best advice is don't use all your bullets. Don't throw anything away that you aren't sure of. Usually there's a little red check mark, but I would definitely just store everything in your item box if you can. Sometimes you'll need something, and if it has a little red check mark, that means you don't have to use it anymore. But the last thing you want to do is accidentally throw like a key item that like prevents you from actually going forward, and it's basically like you'd have to start the game from scratch or go back to a save. Now on the easier modes, you don't need normal, and the easier mode from there, you don't have to use ink ribbons to save. You can save as many times as you want. On harder modes, you will have to use the ink ribbon, but this game isn't difficult. I will say it just because it's different, and I'm sure I had trouble with Resident Evil 2 when I first played it the very first time, until I like played a shit ton of it, like when I was playing like different scenarios and stuff like that. Like, this seems slightly harder, but it's only because it's not familiar, and I'm more acquainted with the 2D Resident Evils, or the overhead, I don't even know what you would call it, like the pre-rendered ones, but I got the hang of it as time went on. So I don't know, the difficulty is about the same. In some ways it's easier, in some ways it's more difficult. Like the tank controls, like, are difficult compared to the free roaming things. Like when you play like the Resident Evil remake or whatever, the first game, it's It makes the game so much easier when you have true analog control. But I would definitely recommend this game, but try to play it on normal. Like, don't sell yourself short. You can do it. Just be patient. The puzzles are all logical. They make sense. Nothing crazy. I can't recommend this game enough. It has at least 4 playthroughs that you can go through where you'll see new stuff each time, and then additional modes. Highly recommend it. Thank you so much for watching, and take care. I hope you're all doing well. Bye.
If you want to, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.